It's not uncommon for people to ask me technical questions on social media channels and in the comments of my YouTube videos, but it's hard to give detailed answers there, just not practical. But when a follower asked me to explain the pros and cons of E85, happy to do it because this is a subject that I love talking about it because I'm a very big fan of E85. I'll share those thoughts right after the break. I don't know if you know this, but I actually now have a merch store, and if you haven't checked out the video description below my videos, then you're missing out. Currently, I've got a pack full of movie quote t-shirts, and more styles are being added every month, and new items are in development right now. So have a look, see if there's anything you like, and wear it with pride. The link is in the video description below. Back in my younger days, we would have killed for E85. Race fuel was what everyone was using at the drag strip. And frankly, I don't even remember seeing anyone use E85 in street applications. Some would use methanol injection, particularly on the big supercharged cars, but usually only at the track. If they were driving around on the street, they were mostly running on gasoline and lower boost. But the rest of us basically did what everybody else did. We went to our favorite speed shop and picked up a drum of VP C12 or C16 or Sunoco's equivalent or whatever else. But back then, there wasn't a lot of information floating around, so a lot of people were putting race gas into their stock car with stock compression, which does absolutely nothing, and that's still true today. Race gas is for high compression engines, right? Most people already know that. Whether they're naturally aspirated, turbocharged, or supercharged, that's what they're for. If you're putting in a stock car, it's a waste of time. Race gas allows you to add more timing and run more boost from your forced induction cars without the fear of pre-ignition, also known as detonation, which of course can be fatal to your engine. Does things like kick a rod out of the side of the block, which is not good, breaking ring lands, and a whole bunch of other things. And I learned a lot during my tenure at NGK Spark Plugs when I traveled around the country with pro NHRA drag racing teams, and I saw just how effective alternative fuels were in making bigger power safely. Ethanol works for a variety of reasons. First off, it burns cooler than regular gasoline. It requires lower combustion temperature, and also it creates a thermodynamic cooling effect that regular gasoline just doesn't offer. And this is quite beneficial because E85 helps keep the engine cooler. But E85 does not make more power on its own. In fact, it makes less. But it allows you to turn up the boost and stave off the pre-ignition and detonation, which, as I said, can lead to catastrophic engine failure. So then why even use it, right? Because with today's tuning devices like the Cobb Access Port and tuning software from any number of companies like Ecotech and on supercharged and turbocharged applications, it's never been easier to get big power throughout the power band just by using an E85 kit and a tuning device and the supporting modifications. So this is why people are doing it. This is a far cry from the 1980s. Back then, if you wanted to turn up the boost, you had to mess around with carburetor jets, idle speed adjustments, experimenting with timing, spark plug choices, fuel mixtures, and even then you usually ended up with a car that would stutter while you're driving in the city traffic and drive like shit on the street, and it was only really good for full throttle or high speed on the freeway. And of course, all those things, those compromises made these cars terrible daily drivers. But back in the days of carburetors and weak ignition systems, race gas was the logical choice. But that's what everybody was doing back then. But today, with the advent of modern distributorless ignition systems and modern ECUs, E85 is the way to go to get cheap, good, reliable horsepower. The designation E85 is a little weird because it's really a blend of gasoline and ethanol. So the percentages range from 15% ethanol to up to 85%, but more like 83%, which is the highest I've ever seen. That's why it's called E85. It goes from 15 to 85. Now, while some cars are flex fuel and they can tolerate some E85, don't think that you can just tank up with E85 and make horsepower on a car that does not have the proper equipment and tuning. Your car won't run well. It'll probably trigger a check engine light, and you can also void your warranty. It'll get bad gas mileage and so forth and so forth. Really, in order to get any power and to have your car run smoothly, your car will certainly need to be tuned for it and set up for it. This means tuning software programming into the ECU from companies like Cobb or Ecotech, like I mentioned a few minutes ago. Why does it work? To put this simply, E85 has a higher octane rating than gasoline. Everybody can understand that. But on the downside, more fuel is required for each burn cycle. So E85 will actually lower your fuel economy, and it doesn't release the same amount of energy as gasoline done pound for pound. But the payoff is more power that comes by being able to turn up the boost safely without the fear of engine damage. And this is why so many people who are running turbochargers or superchargers love E85. How does it work? You have to understand the compression process. If you've ever had auto shop, you've probably heard the phrase suck, squish, bang, blow. What does that mean? Car engines are basically air pumps. They work by sucking in air, right? That's the suck. Then compressing the air and fuel mixture, right? That's the squish. The spark plug ignites the densely packed air, that's the bang, and the exhaust valve opens to allow the exhaust to leave the combustion chamber. And on turbo cars, that exhaust goes into the turbine side of the turbo, right? To make more power, you need to get as much fuel you can into the cylinders with just the right mixture of air, and then ignite that mixture exactly at the right time and burn everything that's in the combustion chamber long enough to burn all of the air fuel mixture and then discharge the waste. Think as each cylinder in your engine as a bucket, okay? If I drop in a few pieces of paper and just light it off, you're gonna get a little bit of fire and a little bit of heat off of it. But what if I could cram more of these papers in there, the fuel, and give it the proper amount of oxygen, and each time it lights off, it's going to release a lot of energy. That's the basic concept that's going on here. Because of the cooling effect of E85, it allows a lot more air and fuel get into each cylinder during each burn cycle. Again, E85 on its own doesn't add horsepower. What it does let you do is add more ignition timing, more boost, and adding more boost allows you to pack more fuel and air into the engine, just as I laid out. More fuel to burn, more energy, and more horsepower. E85 kits are available for a wide range of cars. However, each platform has special requirements. For a car like my R35 GTR, an E85 kit is a popular modification, but to do it on that car, you're going to need bigger fuel injectors, more robust fuel pumps, and a custom tune by Ecotec, and of course a sensor that comes with the kit. With the GTRs, the Ecotec interface lets owners see the exact ratio of gasoline to E85 by hijacking the cancel cruise button. I hold that button down while the car is running, I can see the exact percentage of E85. Sometimes it says 75%, sometimes 80%, depends on the gas to E85 ratio. Other engines will have different requirements, and each setup will need engine-specific supporting modification, including tuning. So you're going to want to talk to a shop that has expertise with your year, make, and model of car. Also, many platforms cannot support running a full tank of straight E85 without extensive modification, so you really need to do your research. What I'm saying is, if your buddy is running 100% E85 with his N54 powered BMW, he probably did a whole bunch of modifications. And if you try to do that on your basically stock car, it doesn't work. It's not going to work out. But of course, the really impressive gains are going to come from turbocharged and supercharged cars. And again, you're probably going to need bigger injectors and a tune at the very least. Most E85 kits just include the items specific to your application, but sometimes they don't include everything you need. That's up to you to do the research as to what else you need to purchase separately to make the kit work. And you can't skimp on this stuff. As I was mentioning earlier, it's mostly for turbocharger or supercharged applications, but there's a company called E-Flex Fuel Technology. They sell kits for many popular naturally aspirated cars, including old Camaros, old and new Dodge Hemi cars, Mustangs, and Nissans, among other applications. And there are other companies that do it as well. So that company was claiming powered gains of about 10 to 12%, which is not unrealistic, but I'd like to see more independent dyno sessions. I saw some promising results with some of the Dodge Hemi cars. They were making 60 horsepower up to 100 pounds of torque on naturally aspirated cars. And I saw some pretty good results with the Dodge Hemi engines. I've seen some impressive numbers from cars that you would not think that would be the case. This guy's stock WRX is rated at 256 horsepower, but it really makes 180 horsepower out of the wheels. And on E85, along with the proper tune and the supporting modifications, he made 356 wheel horsepower, at least according to this dyno. Seems a little bit high for me for that. Who knows if he upped the turbo and added an intercooler or anything else, but I've seen naturally aspirated chargers pick up 60 horsepower and a decent amount of torque as well, so that's encouraging. With cars like the F80 BMW, you can expect to get in about another 100 horsepower. It's not out of the question. And one of the great things of using E85 in car applications like the Nissan GTR, you can use any mix of 91 octane and E85. So if I'm running a tank of E85 and it gets down to a quarter or tank and I have to go another 200 miles, I can just fill up with 91 or 93 or E85 or any mix of that. The system adapts on its own. The sensor reads the ethanol content, the ECU programming just automatically makes the adjustments seamlessly, and you can never tell. So don't worry about mixing E85 with gasoline. These systems are meant to do it, but read the instructions on your kit and the cautions. A few things before rushing out to buy an E85 kit. There's a few things you know for full disclosure. Number one, understand that you will need to change your oil more often. If you're doing it at 7,500 mile intervals, you better cut that down to 5,000 miles, and you'd better do it if you want your engine to live. But what do I care? Your mom's probably paying for it anyway. No, I'm kidding. Number two, before you go to E85, make sure you change your spark plugs. I like the NGK Iridium plugs. Consider going one heat range cooler if you're adding more than 75 or 100 horsepower. Number three, don't let E85 sit in your gas tank for more than a week or two. I typically run 3 tanks of E85, and on the 4th fill up, I fill up with 93. So I'm not running E85 100% of the time. Number four, remember that E85 is going to hurt your gas mileage probably about 20% to 30% less than 93 octane. If my GTR is running straight 93, I get about 220 miles per tank full if I'm driving like a good boy. But if I'm on E85, if I'm on 100% E85, I'm getting about 180 miles, even with being a good boy. You're going to get lower miles per gallon, but when you're doing this is not for gas mileage, you're doing it for more power. Number five, you're also gonna need to clean or replace your fuel filters more often. Just do it, don't cry about it, you gotta do it. And number six, if you're using your car as a daily driver, I'd recommend driving on straight gasoline for commuting, and then maybe add some E85 for the track and for weekend cruises and all that kind of stuff. So as you probably guess, I'm a big fan of E85 applications when they're done right. My GTR, for example, made 491 to the wheels when it was stock, and a recent dyno showed 626 at the wheels with a modest tune with an E85 and the supporting mods. So again, talk to your shop before you order any parts. Do your research, and remember that the internet is not filled with people who have ASE certifications, so be wary about that. And before you jump into E85, one thing you want to do is find out how many E85 gas stations are near your house. If the nearest one is 50 miles away, it's probably not practical for you. And if you want to find out if there are kits for your car, simply go to Google and type in the year, make, and model of car that you have, and then say E85 kit. 2017 Audi S3 E85 kit. There you go. The kits that you can buy will vary, but typically they include fuel line adapters, an ethanol content sensor, and a wiring harness. Kits run from about $350 to about $900 without ECU tuning. But don't forget, you might need newer fuel injectors, fuel pumps, sometime a tuning solution like an EcoTick setup or a PME for the Dodge guys, or any number of things. All in for my GTR, I was in about $2,000 for the whole setup. And I've been on the E85 has been on the car now for 5.5 years. That's it for this time, everybody. See you in the next video, and don't forget to check out my merchandise store. We'll see you next time.